Welcome to our Can't Keep Silent podcast. We discuss a variety of topics, and although the basis of our discussions are spiritual, we deal with real issues, some controversial, which at some point may apply to all of us in some way, either personally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, culturally, nationally, and even globally. I am your host, Lydia Clark. We are currently in a series called I Overcame It. We will be talking with people who have faced tragic, heartbreaking, or dire circumstances, and God delivered them. This series has a twofold purpose: to encourage others who may be facing the same circumstances and let them know there is hope. If God helped them overcome, He will help you. And we also want to let others know that God is alive and He is concerned about your suffering. We live in a fallen world, so suffering is unavoidable. But the promise we have from God is that He will deliver us. In this series, the people we will interview have been delivered and have overcome. God is not apathetic. He's loving, He's powerful, and nothing is impossible with Him. If you allow Him, He will take your suffering and turn it into something beautiful you never imagined. He's great like that. Our guest, Pete Thomas, will share the circumstances and events that led to him weighing over 400 pounds and the insight, revelation, and healing power of God that resulted in him losing over 185 of those pounds. Welcome to another edition of Can't Keep Silent. Today I have my very good friend, Peter Thomas, joining me here in Las Vegas. He came all the way to Las Vegas from Michigan. Via Dallas.
Yes.
To do this interview, yes. And that's our friendship. That's right. So I appreciate him doing that. Let me tell you a little bit about Pete before we get started. I'm going to show you a picture. Here's a picture of Pete. When I first met him up through, let's see, when did we first meet? I don't know.
Somewhere right around 1991. Yes,
okay, 91.
Right. Gave my life to the Lord.
Yep.
1991.
And
yes.
we were members of the same church.
Yes.
And this is how Pete looked. Did you look like this when I met you?
No, I was a little bit lighter. I was on my way up to that big sexy figure there.
Okay, so there's the picture of Pete. God blessed him, and he's had a successful weight loss journey, and
yes.
as a result of his journey, he is anointed, phenomenal speaker on the issues of weight, weight loss. He's a teacher. He can break it down for you. He's a spokesperson. He's worked with corporations with their wellness programs, right? Health and wellness programs, major corporations. He's an author. He's written a book on weight loss, and he's a certified professional life coach.
Yes.
Because what you'll find out during this interview, that for Pete, it wasn't about just losing weight.
That's right.
The whole weight loss thing involved his life.
Yes.
Or the weight gain, the weight loss was a life thing. And I think that's going to be such an important part of our conversation today, because a lot of people are fighting fat and having issues, but it goes deeper than just that. So he is an overcomer, and he is also what he calls a professional fat fighter.
Professional fat fighter. Exactly right.
He appeared on or participated in The Biggest Loser. What year was that?
Season 2.
Season 2. For The Biggest Loser, Pete he's considered the most successful contestant in the history of that show, because how many years ago was that?
It'd be over 15, right about 15, going on 15 years now.
And he's still maintaining this healthy lifestyle, which is successful. It's not about just losing weight for one period of time, but he's been able to maintain this for years. So, you know, if you know someone who's struggling with weight or whatever, make sure you share this video, because I think it's some really deep things he's going to get into about weight loss. And he is an honoree of the Governor's Council on Physical Fitness for the state of Michigan. All right. He's a regular participant in endurance athletic events like half marathons, triathlon.
That's all that.
Bike races and all that. And so, just let me ask you this:
Yes.
How much did you weigh at the most?
So at my largest weighed over 416 pounds.
How tall are you?
6'5".
He was a big guy.
I was huge. I was humongous. I used to say that was big sexy because I took a lot of work to maintain that big sexy figure. Yeah. I was like I say, I was a biggie fry. So I was a big guy, over 416 pounds. When I went on the actual biggest, it was on the show of 401 pounds. So,
wow. I saw that show too.
Yeah.
He was amazing. But this is another thing too. It wasn't that he stayed on the show the whole time and had the trainers with you all the time. The awesome thing about Pete is he got voted off.
That's it. No, that was it.
Voted?
Oh yeah, they vote you off.
Oh, okay.
If you're doing pretty well, which I was doing.
He was doing well. So he went home in what week?
I went home, so I was there on the show, and in 62 days I lost 83 pounds, which is pretty darn good by itself. But at home, on my own, just working right there, working out on my own in the home environment over the summer, I lost another 102 pounds at home. So in total, over a course of 9 months, lost 185 pounds in 9 months.
That's phenomenal, isn't it? And so when he came back to the finale, he won the prize for the person who went home lost the most weight. So he won $100,000, which is just amazing.
A good day.
And it's funny because I remember you telling me that when you went home to, finish your whatever training and eating whatever, you said, when I go back, I want to look like a crack addict.
Oh my goodness, you're bringing back old memories. That's right.
He said he wanted to be that thin.
That's right. And I didn't quite look like a crack addict. Surprisingly, going through the process, I actually lost 195 pounds, but I gained 10 pounds of muscle. So the net was 185. So we'll put up a picture of that when I went back to the actual finale. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pete is an inspiration. He's helped other people on their weight loss journeys and working out and giving them great advice on eating. But then in the recent years, God has done an amazing work for him and given him revelation on how the emotional realm affects the physical realm and the whole weight gain and things like that. And so this is more than just eating right sometimes and doing exercise. There's some things on the inside. So Pete, why don't you start on your weight loss journey, wherever you want to start, like maybe how you gained weight, like what was happening in your life and what was food to you.
Absolutely. One of the things I say is we all know how to lose weight, right? If you eat a little bit less, you walk a little bit more, you're going to lose weight, but there's more to it than that. So specifically for me, and this is for anybody that has had a weight problem over a long period of time or you're really large and dealing with obesity, there's a root to that. So for me, the root for me really started in my childhood. My mother struggled with mental illness, and because of her struggle, we were on the go, we were transient. I lived in 13 different cities by the time I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And it was directly related to her mental illness. And when I say we lived all over the place, we lived in Detroit, we lived in Pontiac, then we lived on the East Coast, Washington, D.C., Arlington, Virginia. And many of those times when we were living there, I was homeless. So I've slept in Greyhound bus stations. I didn't have a place to sleep, and with my mom and by myself. And my mom, different times, and we'll talk about that as well, where she just left. She up and left and abandoned me. So specifically for me, when I was young, the weight issues surrounded the times where there was no food available. For instance, one particular time, I remember living in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and my mom leaves. And I can't pin down the exact age. I was just old enough to learn how to tie my shoe. So assume that's somewhere around between 4 and 6 years old, right? Now she leaves me alone, and she tells me that 3 times a day I'm supposed to go around the court to the neighbor's house inside the courtyard, right around the court, and eat at her house, right, or eat at their house. So we figured out there's like Perry School apartments in the Ypsilanti area, right? So that's what I did every single day. I would go over for breakfast. I would go and I would eat, and I distinctly remember their home because they had like a Formica tabletop and they had metal chairs. It was just very, very memorable. And then I would come back to the house by myself and play by myself all day long. I remember that summer I had this green machine big wheel, right? So I'm riding around the courtyard in this green machine big wheel. And but that was 3 times a day I was supposed to go around to the neighbor's house.
You were by yourself?
Completely. Nobody else living in it. Nobody else living in the West. It was like a townhouse. Nobody else living in the townhouse. Now, once I do that, did it for about 2 weeks by myself every single day. My mom comes back with my little sister. Now, I didn't even know that she was pregnant, right? Because I'm too young to really know what that is. But I come back with my little sister, and I'm just going on with life, like, oh, I got a little sister, right? Well, about a year and a half later, we move from that location. We move over to Detroit, west side of Detroit. And there, that winter, my mom does the same thing. She leaves. This time, there are no neighbors around there for me to eat at, right? What she does is she teaches me how to make pork and beans on the stove. Right?
And how old are you?
That I would have been about 6, probably going on 7.
And how old was your little sister?
By that time, she's just, about 2 years old. So 2 years old. So she's walking. So definitely right around 2 years old. So she leaves me. She teaches me how to make the hot dogs and pork and beans. I can remember she would tell me to put the pot of water on the stove and heat the stove up. And I remember that took so long, right, that I would just make the water hot in the sink, and then I would drop the hot dogs in the hot water in the sink, But here's the thing. The food ran out. And this time there was no neighbor to go and walk to, right? And it was the middle of the winter and we had no food in the house. So here, what I have to do is I have to take my little sister, put her winter clothes on her, and walk out of the back door to go find some food.
And you're like 7?
Like 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I can remember walking out the back door, holding hands with my little sister, and we're crossing this playground, and this playground has a cement turtle. So back in the day, they didn't care about injuries to kids, right? There's a cement turtle, and on this cement turtle was my mom's scarf, or what I thought was my mom's scarf. Now at this age, I distinctly remember the thoughts. I thought to myself, my mom must be dead. Why else would she not come back? And why else would her scarf be here on this turtle?
Well, how long do you think she had been gone?
Oh, by that time she'd been at least gone 2 weeks.
Okay.
At least 2 weeks. Now, I thought she was dead, but I have my little sister with me, so I have to keep going forward, right? And so
Okay, fine. Did you go to school?
No, I'm going to knock for food. I'm going to knock on doors for food.
So you weren't in school?
No.
At the
was
time.
not in school.
That's what I'm
Correct.
okay.
No. So I end up going again. We're run out of food that day. We got to go find some food. I end up knocking on the door of the first house that we come to, and thankfully, Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't in there, right? But literally, they took us in and they fed us. And that night, they took us to the police station. We were in the foster care system that night. And me and my sister, we got separated and we got brought back together at a group home and separated again. So that kind of started the journey in foster care. So I was in foster care, in and out of foster care for many years. Me and my sister ended up together again on a foster home on St. Albans Street in Detroit. Remember the street. And we were at this foster home. Was not a good foster home at all.
How old were you now?
I had my 8th birthday at that foster home.
Okay.
I remember it. So I remember having my 8th birthday there. Now, at that particular foster home, my mom abducted me from that foster home. So it was really interesting. So my mom, you have to understand, my mom was very, very bright, right? She went to school and she double majored in criminal justice and psychology. She's very, very bright. And the story that I later found out, that my family later told me, is that when she was in college, she was recruited by the police department to do undercover narcotics work. And what they wanted kids from college to do was to go back and to buy narcotics in the bad neighborhoods of Detroit. She did that and she got discovered, right? And when she got discovered, they beat her to within an inch of her life. Yeah, and they left her on the steps of a hospital, right? Left her alive, but left her on the steps of the hospital. So that caused her chemical imbalance. Now that was when she was in college. So she then goes back to grad school, meets a guy, ends up having a relationship with him, and I end up coming out of that. I never met my father or anything like that. She just swooped me up and took care of me herself. So I never met my father. But she was a very, very smart woman when she was mentally stable, right? And so somehow she found out what foster home I was at, right? So now we're back to 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, I'm with my sister at this foster home. She finds out where I'm at. And one day I'm out during recess there at the school, I'm out playing in the big, the big yard where all the kids play. And I see my mom. I'm like, oh my God, it's my mom. I wave and I run over to her and she says, don't make too much noise, go back and play. But when the kids go inside, when the bell rings and the kids go inside, I want you to go over to the baseball backstop and hide behind the backstop when the kids go in. So I'm like, okay. So I went back and played, and I'm excited. I just see my mom. The bell goes off. Kids run inside. I run around to the baseball backstop and I hide, right? Until all the kids go in. All the kids go in, you know, nobody's tracking you, you know what I mean? There are no pages or anything where they track. And then my mom waves me across the street once all the kids go in. So I go with my mom across the street. She's got a cab waiting. We hop in a cab, go straight to the airport, Detroit Metro Airport. We're in Washington, D.C. that evening. So she, while having this mental illness, she could plan things out, right? So she had this strategy to come steal me and to take me away. Right?
Okay, but your sister, she wasn't a part of
I haven't seen my sister since.
Really?
Yeah, haven't seen my sister since. So now for many years, for decades, that piece alone bothered me so very much. I wanted to know where is my sister? Why did you leave my sister behind? Was it really my sister? I had all of these thoughts, right? And then my mother ended up passing a couple of years ago, and I was able to petition the state of Michigan for my adoption records. And I opened the records up and find out that it was her intention all along to go back and get my sister. She would even call the foster home and harass the foster parents and tell them, I'm coming to get my baby, et cetera, et cetera. But just somewhere in there mentally, she could not pull it off. She could not go back and get my foster sister. Get my sister from the foster home. And I'm not really, looking in hindsight. I want to know who my sister is, right? But I can see the hand of God moving in that, because if she had pulled my sister into this transient mess that we were in, no telling where we would have ended up. So anyway, she takes me at that age, just turning 8 years old. She takes me and we end up going to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., there was times where we had a place to stay, times of homelessness. I can remember one time we caught the Greyhound bus to Norfolk, Virginia, and we slept in the bus station because we had no place to go. So the family later started telling me that because of this mental illness, she constantly had this feeling that someone was coming to get me or to steal me from her. So that just caused her to be on the go. I remember living in Washington, D.C., and we would go to Catholic church on the regular, right, and Catholic Mass. And there were times where she would tell us, okay, this week we're going to fast, right? And you're kids, you don't know anything any better, right? You're going to do what your mom tells you. And later I find out, we're fasting because we had no food. Right, we just had no food. But again, these issues with food, right, and really with women, with your mom, right, these things begin to cement themselves, right? They begin to cement themselves. So if we skip over the story, we can come back to it. But if you skip to when food is regularly available, how do I eat, right? So there was a time where food's not available. And this is my early developmental years. So when food becomes available, how do I eat?
You overeat.
I overeat. That's right. I eat everything because I don't know when the next meal is coming.
Right.
This is how I've been trained, right? And so many of us, we have these habits that are rooted in our childhood, and I can definitely see this is rooted in that. So I'm an adult, and I'm an adult going to church. We're going to an amazing church, right? And I remember my daily habit on a daily, for breakfast, I'm eating 9 slices of bacon, 4 eggs, and 16 ounces of orange juice. That's breakfast. For lunch, I'm going to Kentucky Fried Chicken, having 4 pieces of crispy chicken, having a biscuit and a Diet Coke, right? Because I think the Diet Coke is going to do something.
A lot of people do that.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
But that was all rooted in the way that I was trained. Right, the way that I was brought up. The Bible talks about, train a child in the way that he should go. And I like to say good or bad, right? And he's not going to depart. And I did not depart from that for many, many years. And I would confess that child was going to change, confess that I was going to change, but I didn't know how.
Even with the eating,
yes.
like we have this thing in our bodies that tells us you're full.
Come on, 100%.
Right? But yours was more a mental thing that I got to eat all I can now.
Yeah.
So you just overrode that.
That's right.
You're full.
That's right.
Because you're just thinking, I got to eat all I can now because I might not can eat.
Well, there's
later.
2 parts of that. So when I teach it like this, parents can override that.
That's
so
true.
I believe children
That's true.
naturally, you have a trigger. Children, human beings have a natural trigger that will tell them when they're full. But number one, parents can override that by saying things to kid. Eat everything on your plate.
You gotta eat it all.
Eat it all. Eat it all. And what that is that's rooted in generations ago when there wasn't enough food around. Right, so now we're telling kids, or another one, eat, boy, don't you know that there's children dying in China? You better eat all that. You know what I mean? So we force these things on our kids. Another one, when I was teaching a class, somebody told me this. They said, my mom used to tell me, take all you want, but eat all you take.
Yeah.
And you think about that. Well, kids have big eyes, right?
Bigger than their bellies.
That's right, bigger than bellies. And so what that does is it changes the biology, because the body knows when to stop, but you're continuing to force food on it. So now that just breaks. And that's what happened. Well, and not just that, that's what happened to me. What started was the first signal I had going on in my body is I'm hungry. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, right? And that was not getting satisfied because there was no food, right? So we were going homeless. So now, whatever signals are going off, I'm going to override that signal that I'm full with the fact that I can remember what it was like to not have food, right? And so, yeah, so I don't have that signal now. My signal doesn't tell me today that I'm hungry. Oh, no. So this is why I have to measure what I eat. I have to pay attention. And I have these things, whether I'm counting what I eat or I'm paying attention to what I eat. Like, for instance, if I'm riding in a car, which is for many people, I'll just naturally overeat, right? But I just don't have that natural stop signal. It's just been broken. It's been broken. Biologically broken. I just don't get a signal at all. So now I have to be extra careful about what I eat. Yep, but you're exactly right. We do have that signal. Kids have that signal, but either through trauma or bad parenting, right? Which is, I just call it bad parenting. And so, and I teach like this, I said, my mom fed me out of a box, right? She fed me out of a box, meaning it was either cookies or cake, or it was boxed food all the time. There was no fresh food, right? There was no learning how to cook. I remember one time, we bounced around on the East Coast, and then we moved back to Michigan. And so I'm living in East Lansing, Michigan. We were going down to the Catholic church down on campus, but we weren't going to Mass. We were going down there to get the 2-for-1 Burger King coupons, Whopper coupons from Burger King, that were in the pamphlet that they had at Mass. So the church had these pamphlets, 2-for-1 Burger King coupons. And so by now I'm about 8 years old, right? 8 or 9 years old, and I really learned to eat. My palate gets attuned to fast food at an early age, because we would buy 2-for-1 Whoppers. Now, the place that we live, probably my mom's, she had a combination of paranoia and dementia. So this paranoia is just, it's really, I guess you would say it's enraged or whatever it is. Because I can remember the place that we lived, she would put the box spring up against the window, right? Because she thought that rays were beaming in the house looking for us. She did not have she didn't turn either electricity or the gas. She didn't turn one of those on because she thought that would, I think it was the gas. And so that meant we didn't have a stove, right? So that means we ate out, we ate fast food all the time. And I can remember living there, not going to school on a regular basis. Weird thing, and I did a lot of reading during that time. She would bring books home. I can remember watching Who Shot JR. I remember that. I was watching Dallas there. Yes, Dallas. But we would sleep on this, on the mattress top on the ground, right, on the floor. And she had the box spring up against the window. And I was eating fast food every single day. So my palate became attuned to fast food. So the thing about fast food is it's high fat, high sodium, high carbohydrate, high sugar, right? It's all of these things combined together. So for me to get certain flavors, it has to be turned way up. Like you mentioned something, she blessed me, y'all. She blessed me. Her and her husband blessed me to be able to stay here tonight, flew in last night, and cook. What did you cook? Some veggie pasta? Veggie pasta, yes. Was it good?
I enjoyed it.
She enjoyed it. Now, what she noticed in there, you noticed that there was you said, what'd you say? You could taste the spinach in it.
Yeah.
I couldn't taste none of that. I could taste none of that. I could taste the tomato sauce, right? But couldn't taste none of that. And that's because at an early age, my the flavor senses have just been blown out of the water, because I was raised on fast food. So I, like people eat spicy food, it take like a spice level of 8 for me even to taste it. So from an early age, all of those things are just blown away.
And so that's good for parents.
That's right.
To understand about your children. I mean, when you're working, I get it. Like me, both my husband and I were working, and so some days I just didn't feel like cooking.
That's
so
right.
you get, fast food, but every day,
that's
the
it.
diet of that.
That's right.
Can really change your taste buds. Is that what you're
that's
saying?
Right. It can change your taste buds and your palate, and your kids will be attuned to that, right? They'll be attuned to that. That's the thing that they want all the time, and it becomes natural, right? So sweets and those types of things, they should not be an everyday thing, and you'll start to notice your kids gravitate to it. I remember one time it hurt my heart. I saw a lady. This is after I'd lost the weight, and after I had a great understanding, the Lord has given me wisdom, and I studied up on the subject. I saw a lady driving in a van with 2 kids in the back. both of the kids were eating honey buns, and she had just come out of a gas station, so I'm sure she bought the honey buns there at the gas station. And she's feeding those kids that, well, right after school. Well, number one, that's like half the calories the kids need for the day,
right.
eating those honey buns. Number two, it's high sugar processed foods, and it is going to turn their palate to a certain way. So when you put vegetables in front of them, right, when you put normally flavored foods, they're going to resist it. And so, but for me, mine was rooted all in trauma. The trauma of my mom and not having food around. Too often what happens is, especially as parents, we do it without thinking, right? And we really have to think and think about what are we giving our kids, especially if we want them to grow up healthy or grow up just without massive weight issues.
So how long was this transient period with your mom? How long did that last?
So that lasted, I was in and out of foster home. So I mentioned the time I was in I was in Lansing, Michigan. And what happened was somebody noticed that I wasn't going to school. So they called whatever the equivalent of protective services back then. They come and get me. I ended up in foster care again. It was in 2 or 3 foster homes in the Lansing area. Ended up going to a group home, and somehow some third cousins, they find out I'm in this foster home, and they come and adopt me out of the foster home, and I end up going to the east side of Detroit by the time I was in 8th grade. So 8th grade through 12th or first year college was much more stable. It was much stable. But up until the 8th grade, I just bounced around all over the place. So from 0 to 8th grade, just lived all over the place, was transient, homeless, went through all of that, went through everything.
So what was your weight like at this time, up to 8th grade?
Yeah, so during that time, up to 8th grade, it was probably somewhat normal, right? Because there was just no normality, and food wasn't normal. It wasn't around. And now on the east side of Detroit, I lived with some third cousins who ended up adopting me, right? And the food was given to you, right? This is your breakfast, right? And it really wasn't any seconds, And I did have a proclivity, like I used to love eating Frosted Flakes, right? I had Frosted Flakes. I pour the milk in there, a whole gallon of as much whole milk as I can, let it soak up. Then I'd eat all the Frosted Flakes out and redo it again, right? So I know I had this sugar thing going on, but I was also very active, just as a kid in the hood. These are the days where you better go outside and play. You don't have Game Boys to play on, right? So I would go outside and play. It really, the weight issues really started. No, I shouldn't say the weight issues. My habits that were already there, they started coming to the fore once I got away to school. When I came up to U of M, and breakfast was all you could eat.
Okay, so wait, when you were in your adoptive home, it was portion control.
It was portion control.
Because you could only get what they gave.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
and also that time, I didn't want to sit around the house eating. I wanted to eat as soon as I could, so I could go back outside and play. Right. That's like, okay, my boys are down the street, they're playing basketball. Let me come in here and eat that. Now I never tasted my food. I still don't taste much now. I just shovel it down. Even though I practice slowing down, right, I still don't have the taste buds to where, wow, that was really an enjoyable meal, right? That's just, they're just broken, right? And so for me, those days, this is like after school, had a snack, I had a cherry pie from Hostess and a thing of milk. Like, guzzle that, now out, I'm going to play, right? Okay. But in college, when I hit college, I had to give myself my portions.
Right.
That's when things are messed up, because some old, I really looking back on it, like some cafeteria bacon. Oh my God, that's some good stuff, right? That's some good stuff. And so I'd have like 8 slices of cafeteria bacon, has some maple syrup on there. I'm just making some mess. This is not a balanced meal at all, right? It's not a balanced meal at all. And then eating whole pizzas on Friday night and all that, and even then was not the worst. The side effects were not the worst, because I'm still active. I'm walking to class, right? Going to play basketball and all that. But now these habits are being cemented. I think this is because no one has ever taught me how to eat, right? Nobody's ever taught me to combine foods. I can remember after I lost the weight, talking to my little sister, Veronica Smith, she said, my mama taught me that you always combine a protein with a carb. Like, well, how does she know that? Your grandmama didn't go to no school, right? You know what I mean? But there was just certain things that were taught and passed down. Nobody ever taught me any of this. So I could have a plate of bacon and be happy and go on my way. I could have a plate of pancakes and syrup and butter and just go on my way. And all of these things, they're cementing these horrible habits. And really when it became the worst was when I settled down. When I got saved, right? And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to church on a regular. I'm not going to be as active. I was married at the time, right? And I wasn't running around doing all these things. then these bad habits, and I'm going to
Caught
work,
up.
they just caught up because the breakfast is, 9 slices of bacon, 4 eggs. The lunch is, well, I'm going out to eat at whatever fast food because I just don't know anything, and dinner is just as bad, right? So even though my wife would try to prepare certain things, it would not be filling because my body is already, it's looking for more and more and more food.
So at that time, did you ever reach a point, like if you eat a whole pizza, do you say I'm full? Or is your mind just saying, okay, you probably should stop now?
Yeah, so when you're that big, what happens is you don't stop until you feel full, and by that time you feel sick.
Oh.
So this is when folks lying on the couch, oh, I'm so full. That's way past full. You're not full. There's a physical response to where you're like. So I teach, and what I put in the book, I said there are different food families. All right. So some people look at food as fuel. Right. That's you and your family. Right. You're like, just give me enough. All right. That's enough. I need to go do whatever. Food is fuel. It's just enough to fuel me to my next meal. That's it. And then there are two other groups of families that I said there's the more flavor family. Certain folks, when they eat something, it's got to be really rich and full flavor. Like if you're going to have a salad, you're going to have it with Roca blue cheese, right? It's got to be real. And then there's me. I don't really care what it tastes like. I just need to have more food. So it's a more flavor family, the more food family. So I need more food. So for me, I have to be very careful about what I eat. This is like when I went to the grocery store. I got 4 packs of strawberries, right? I got eight apples, 4 packs. I'm gonna knock out here.
He's gonna be here like 2 days, and he
That's
got
right.
4 packs of
4
strawberries.
packs. Oh, and like 6 or 8 apples,
Yeah.
right? And so my snack. Here's the thing: while somebody can snack on a little piece of a candy bar and be good, no, I need volume. So I'm going to eat a half, and literally the strawberries are a pound. I'm eating half a pound of strawberries, right? I mean 8 ounces while somebody else could get full on that, because my body, my brain, and all of that doesn't work the same as other people's. And so I've learned that the Lord has healed me, delivered. I started studying how my body works, so I can manage the process. But I'm never ever going to be like somebody just I put down a little food on the plate and be good. No. My body would literally crave more and more and more and more. This is why every meal, and I share this in the book, every meal I have 3 things: a fluid, a filler, and a feast. Right? Fluid, filler, and a feast with every meal. The fluid is simply going to be a water or a tea, or I used to drink Diet Pop, right? But that's going to start to fill me up. The filler is going to be a salad. It's going to be a vegetable or broth-based soup. And then the feast is the thing that I kind of want. If I wanted to have a small steak or a lean steak, I will have that. Mm-hmm. But it's that I had to have a system of eating, because again, the internal triggers of eating have been broken. So now I have to replace that with a system.
This is important because there are people out there that I know who are not necessarily overweight, mm-hmm. like you were, mm-hmm. Throughout high school until mm-hmm. you hit college.
That's right.
But they have poor eating habits, but they think they're okay because they're active. They're not seeing the, overweightness or anything. But sometime in life, you're going to slow down.
100%.
And you don't know. It could be maybe you injure yourself mm-hmm. and whatever. And so I think it's important to pay attention to your eating habits. Just because you're thinner,
that's right,
doesn't mean that there's not a problem, because that's not the issue. The issue is how you're eating.
That's right.
Because if your activity level drops for whatever reason, mm-hmm. you can end up the same way. So I think that's important for people to realize too. Just because you're thin doesn't mean, like me, I'm a sugartarian. Mm-hmm. That's my main food group. And so people say, "Oh, you're so small and everything," but I don't eat right. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I'm not healthy. Mm-hmm. I'm not overweight, but I'm not healthy, and so I really had to kind of try to cut back on the sugar, because now that I'm older, I'm seeing the effects of sugar on my body.
Come on, 100%. And I think, speaking of sugar in the body, so I think sugar is the biggest devil. They call them the white poison: sugar, flour, and salt, right? But I think sugar is by far the worst, because there's a whole group of people that have, especially type 2 diabetes, right? Back in the day, our grandparents, we didn't call it diabetes.
Sugar.
They call it sugar. You know what I mean?
You got sugar.
You got sugar, right? And that also tells you the solution to that problem is get rid of the sugar. Get rid of the sugar in your life and you'll be much better off. But however, when you go to the doctor, they're going to give you some medicine, right? They're not going to tell you to exercise, they're not going to tell you to cut the sugar. Mm-hmm. They will keep that behavior, whatever that behavior is, you got to just keep it just here, take this insulin, But it really is, it comes down to you managing what you eat. Now, and then with me personally, I'm sorry. You mentioned, you're going to slow down, and this is what people don't consider. Whether it be that you've got a job and you're very active on the job. If you do a job well, you're going to get promoted. Eventually, you will have a desk job and you won't be as active.
Right.
If you're a family, if you get pregnant in the family, right, you could be very active, but now you're in the house more. You're taking care of the children more, right? So there are going to be times in life where you just naturally are going to slow down. And so the key is that you have a style of eating that serves you throughout your life, right? The things that you may have eaten when you were young, you're not going to have longevity. So that's like, now my focus is on longevity. Got the weight thing figured out. And then again, the background to that. Now, different people have different issues. You mentioned somebody who may not be obese, right? And I also break it down. There are different categories of people that may struggle with their weight. If you're 5 to 10 pounds overweight, we probably need to get you just to cut out some bad habits, cut out that dessert. I say when you sit down to eat, you have one of three things. You either have the bread, the wine, or the dessert. You don't have all three. I don't drink at all, right? So for me, you can only have one of the three, because they're all sugar. So the bread, it turns into sugar in your body, the carbohydrates. The wine is straight sugar, or the alcohol for folks that drink alcohol, right? And then you've got the dessert. They're all sugar, but you can only have one of the three.
Okay.
And so I've learned that I've got to manage how I eat, but really for me to keep the weight off, and this is the difference, right? There's losing weight and there's keeping the weight off.
That's right.
For me to keep the weight off, I had to do as the Bible said. The Bible says, lay aside every weight that does so easily beset us. I had to go back to figure out the roots of it, not just from a educational standpoint, like where did I start overeating, but I had to figure out how did my relationship with my mother affect me.
Okay, but before you get into
Yes.
that, did you try diets?
Oh yeah, tried everything. And now you have to understand, I'm gonna say this, and hopefully I don't offend anybody because I'm talking about me. Fat people really do a horrible job at trying stuff, right? And we do a horrible job. We say, I tried everything, right? So I had somebody reach out to me. They were thinking about going to get bariatric surgery. They say, I tried everything. Okay, what does it mean to try? Well, I tried this diet. Okay, did you stick with it for 3 months? Well, no. Well, did you stick with it for 1 month? Well, I tried it for a couple of weeks. Okay, have you ever tried college? You don't try college in 1 month. You've got to really give it some time for it to work. So fat people lie. That's my number one lie. We lie.
He's saying that because
you've seen my before picture, right? You've seen we lie. We don't try stuff, right? We will play around with it, but then we have a birthday party or something, and we're done with that thing. So when we try things, we try, but it's not for an extended period of time. Now, there was a program called Body for Life, and I was all into this. We hired a trainer. Trainer showed up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We were working out. We were eating according to this guy's plan. We were losing weight. It was great. The problem was the plan, the lifestyle was not long-term sustainable. It's like there's no way you can eat like a bodybuilder. I'm not a bodybuilder, right? So a big part of trying diets and dieting is who designed the diet. For number one, I say if skinny people design the diet, it's not going to work for me because you don't know how my body functions, right? I remember listening to a guy, famous guy, Dr. Joe Furman, and one of the things he said, Americans, they eat at gas stations. He just stopped eating at gas stations. To me, that's an ignorant thing to say because there's a certain number of people on the course of their day, they have to stop at gas stations, right? So teach them how to eat healthy at the gas station. Don't just say stop that, right? So,
is there really anything healthy at a gas station?
Absolutely. Yes, you have fruit at almost every gas station. Yeah. You can buy nuts, you can buy beef jerky, you can buy, and if it's not healthy, you can do healthier. You can do healthier than fast food. Than pork skins, right? Exactly. Then chips and slushies. You can do a little better, right? They have water. They have flavored water. They have diet pop. You know what I mean? You can do a little better, right? And so that's the key that nobody teaches. They just say avoid that. And so that's one of my big issues. So I don't believe. I put it like this. I don't believe we stop bad behaviors of any type. I believe we replace those behaviors. So I call it, if you get biblical, Jesus was what's called a propitiation, right? He took our sins, upon the cross. He was our substitute. It's that same principle when it comes to bad foods. You have to replace those bad foods. The likelihood of you just stopping them is minimal. The likelihood of you just stopping a bad habit, whether you're smoking weed or whatever, I'm just going cold turkey stop. Those folks are few, so incredibly few and far between. And the reason is this: we've come to practice coping, right? There are difficulties in our life that we go through. You have a go-to coping mechanism. If that coping mechanism is bad, you have to replace it. Because the trials are still going to, that's right, the trials are still going to come. You need to find a way to cope. So,
his name is Jesus.
Jesus, I was about to say that, that's right. And so, for instance, when something comes, if a bad thing comes against you, you turn to weed or whatever, or to food, because all of these things are addictive, right? Mm-hmm. You turn to food. If you can then say, okay, let me turn to prayer, right? Well, that is the ideal. Right. But in the meantime, can I get you to turn to some apples? Right? Can I get you to not be as damaging to yourself while you're developing this good godly character and habits? And okay, I went through some stuff at work. I'm about to go in here in this room and pray. You know what I mean? Okay, that's where we want you to be. But on the way,
pick up the apple.
Pick up an apple instead of picking up that ice cream. Right? Exactly right. Exactly right. So the long answer to your question is yes. Tried multiple diets. I tried everything. None of them worked because number one, the majority of diets don't give you the basics, which I believe you need to make a transformation, which is education, right? Without education, there can be no transformation. Mm-hmm. So I tell you to eat. And there are two types of diet plans. One diet plan is what I call a counting plan. All right. So you're either counting carbohydrates, you're counting calories, you're counting something. Right. Mm-hmm. Then the other type of diet plan is what I call a set plan, SET. So you eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, and this for dinner. Right. Those are the two types. The best is a combination of both. In other words, for instance, let me give you an example of a set plan. There's something called the cookie dough diet. Right? Mm-hmm. Cookie dough diet. You have a cookie, what you're shaking your head. You already know.
Cookie dough. Oh my God. Sounds like my kind of plan.
That's right. So I give you the plan is you eat a cookie for breakfast, a cookie for lunch, and then whatever you want for dinner. And people lose weight on the plan. Mm. Because you replace that cookie with 200 calories, you're eating that instead of your normal breakfast, which is 700 calories. Mm. So yes, that cookie's going to work. Cookie for lunch, yeah. When I was eating 4 pieces of fried chicken and I replaced that with a cookie, yes, that's fewer calories. At dinner, it's a wash. I'm still eating all the crap that I used to eat, right? Still eating poorly. But that's not sustainable long term for the rest of my life.
Right.
It's just not. And so the best is a combination of both to where you understand what's in the food you're eating. I know that an ounce of cheese is 100 calories, 90 to 100 calories. I know that a chicken breast, especially if it's baked, about 140 to 160 calories. I know that hamburgers, right, there's a range. The worst kind of hamburgers in the back of the store, they're not even in a clear package. They're in this wrapping that has pictures of hamburger on it, right? You know those? So 4 ounces of those are 300 calories. You can get 96% lean hamburger for only 160 calories for the same amount, 4 ounces. So now in my mind, I'm like, if I get 96% lean hamburger, that's 160 calories. If I get the worst high fat hamburger, that's 300 calories. I can have 2 hamburgers of the lean stuff for the same amount of calories I can. So it's about knowing what's in the food that you eat, right? And that makes all the difference. So I believe you cannot have any permanent transformation without specific practical education. You have to have that if you're going to make a change. And so that's the way the Lord directed me, and that's what's allowed me to keep the weight off.
And you've helped people by giving them this education, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I just want to say the title of his book is Lose It Fast.
Yes.
Lose it fast, but lose it forever.
That's right.
You don't want to just attempt, because even people that have had the bariatric surgery.
That's right.
I've seen people just gain the weight right back, which is so sad because you have to go through a lot to have that surgery.
That's right.
But because their mind or their issues
that's right.
that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But what I wanted to ask you also was, when you became a Christian and you became saved, did God deal with you about your weight? Did He talk to you about your weight?
He did in a roundabout way. Now, obviously, I believe that He had a plan for me, a purposeful plan for me that was long term. But one of the things the amazing thing about the church that we went to is that I had a sense that there was a purpose for my life, that I wasn't just put on this planet just to exist, that there was a purpose for my life. And I understood, I don't think it was overtly said or I got a word from the Lord, but that my purpose for my life required me to be healthy. It just required it.
Yeah.
I needed to be healthy if I was going to live my best. I just absolutely needed that. So as my weight was going up, I knew that there was a problem. I didn't really know how to deal with it, right? I can remember being in a men's Bible study. I'm 25 years old, and I'm saying, you know what? If I'm 30 and I'm still at this weight, I got to do something. Now, I didn't also know that I was confessing my future. Because I could have said right then, you know what, I'm 25 and I'm overweight, I need to do something now, right? But when 30 hit, it's like when I started doing something, by that time I was another 60 pounds heavier, right? And it got to that point, I was like, Lord, I've got to do something, right? There's got to be some change. I believe that the future that you have for me, this destiny you have for me, there's something unique and special about it. And I've got to be healthy to accomplish all that you have for me. So that's when I started trying different diets and going on, hiring a trainer and all that kind of stuff. I was willing to do absolutely anything to lose weight aside from bariatric surgery. And it's because I had a revelation about bariatric surgery from very early on. Number one, now I've refined my thoughts on it to this. Bariatric surgery is a surgical solution to a psychological problem. And I put it like this. For anyone that's had bariatric surgery, I simply ask the question. So the issue with your stomach, right? Was your stomach, was that the thing driving you to go eat? And you say, well, no. Well, what was the driver? It was this. So, but what medicine does, what big medicine does is, there's another one of my sayings, is people will profit off your dysfunction. Even if your dysfunction is ignorance, right? And so you've not thought through the fact that it's your mind that's driving you to go get something to eat. Your mind is driving you to go get this food. So before I had those thoughts coalesced, I knew I can do anything but that, because that makes no sense. It makes no sense for me to get surgery for something that I see people running around the track and accomplishing. So went on
and
that
it's
journey.
not even just your mind either, it's your spirit.
That's right.
Too,
Absolutely
right?
Right.
That's
right.
involved in there. And so
Absolutely.
you were telling me that when you got heavy into like, I have to lose this weight.
That's right.
God showed you He had a purpose for your life, and you wanted to fulfill that. What happened as far as spiritually?
Yes.
And emotionally, because sometimes that's all connected.
It is 100%.
And so, because the Bible says that we're to be transformed by the renewing of our minds.
That's
So
right.
some of it happens here, and then
That's
our
right.
spirit
Come on.
has to be transformed as well. So talk about that
Yeah,
part of the
absolutely.
journey.
Well, I mentioned, we started off mentioning about how my mom bounced me around to all these different places. So I realized right around that 30-year-old age, right, I realized, okay, I had this damage by my mom. Now, she's the primary female in my life, right, who God put in my life. And all of my issues growing up were centered around her, right? And this not having food, all of those are real deep issues. And what I had to do was, our church was just so amazing that we were introduced to deliverance and introduced to inner healing. And something was just in me wanting more, wanting better. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be healed. I was talking to someone recently that sometimes we have these habits and we don't think anything of them, but I realized certain habits I wasn't breaking. The eating was one of them. Then I had habits with, guys going to look on the internet and look at stuff and like, why can't I break this? What is this? I should be just able to break these things, right? And it's like, something is not right. It's not right. So I went out and pursued inner healing. I pursued deliverance. I remember telling our pastor, I was like, I'm going to go to Ohio, because this is a guy down there named Weird Worley, and he teaches deliverance. I'm going down there. But the response was, well, we do deliverance here. And I was like, I'm just not getting something I need, right? So I can say this, that you have to take it upon yourself to get better. To God, because I believe that desire to do better comes from God. Right?
Yeah.
That comes from God. But you can't just sit back and expect help to come to you. Right? God sends the raven to the prophet. You know what I mean? He does. But sometimes you got to get up and leave your land. You know what I mean? As in Abraham, you got to leave your people and you got to go to where the help is. And so for me, I searched out and I sought for healing and found a place that did inner healing and deliverance. And the start of it was inner healing. It's dealing with those issues that you've gone through when you were younger, coming face to face with them, right? And forgiving the people that affected you, forgiving yourself, and even going through and forgiving God for being in this situation, because sometimes we have this hidden anger with God, right? So went through all of that process, and it was just completely transformative. Completely transformative, changed my life. And so once I was clean, like for instance, one of the things after going through deliverance, I can remember I had a real bad habit of just biting my nails all the time. They wasn't nutritious. They wouldn't, didn't taste good or anything. Just bite them all the time, right? And I can remember a month after going through deliverance, I hadn't bitten my nails in a month. I'm like, what is that? What in the world is that? Like, what? I just stopped, And this wasn't even something I was asking the Lord about, because I just thought that was just me. But by going through inner healing and deliverance, some weights that were attached to me, the ways that the enemy would attack me, those things just fell by the wayside. And I had to maintain that, right? I had to maintain that deliverance. But the inner healing for me was the start. And then once I was healed, once I forgave my mom for the pain that she caused, and that was over the course of time, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just overnight. Oh, Mama, and many times what we'll do is, I'll just say, oh yeah, I forgive my mom. You ain't even thought about what you've gone through. Right? Or I forget this person for what they did to me. You haven't really thought about what you've gone through. And so real, true forgiveness can take you some time where you're sitting in the pain of that moment and you release that thing to God. And so I went through that. And now I'm free from the emotional baggage, but I still have the physical residue, the physical baggage, because I'm 416 pounds. Yeah. But that was the setup to then be able to go on to a television show, Biggest Loser, and to start the journey to clear out the external. Now, many of the people that go on a show like The Biggest Loser, they've never done the internal work. Mm-hmm. So when you wipe the external clean, right, you lose all that weight because the internal issues are still there. They end up going right back to their old habits and they regain the weight, right? And then they haven't had any education. The Lord directed me when I came on the show. I spent a season of my life studying this subject because I did not want to go back. But the start of it all was the inner healing. It's the getting the counseling, the thoroughly giving it up to the Lord, right?
And this wasn't just like any counseling. This was spiritual counseling. Spiritual led inner healing by God's Spirit, because God's Spirit, He knows everything. He knows all of the issues that we have. And so you sought godly ministry and godly counsel, because it's God that breaks those yokes and those bondages. And that's all deliverance is. It's just setting you free from demonic oppression, because it's not just emotional wounds and things like that, but there is demonic oppression associated with those traumas, and you need deliverance from them. And so this may sound spooky and scary to you, but it's not. It's just God showing His love towards you. He wants you to be free. He wants you to be healthy. He wants your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, And so Pete, even though he was on The Biggest Loser, that wasn't the core of his transformation. It was from the inside out.
And let me follow up on that. When you say it's godly counseling, it's God. What you're submitting to other folks who have submitted themselves to God, and when they're praying with you, they're also hearing from God about you, and they're directing the conversation, directing the counseling in a certain way. So it is far from spooky. What it is, for instance, I go back on a regular basis, and I was going through some inner healing in December. And a person brought up something. I just hear the Lord saying that this affected you. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, it did. You know what I mean? And as soon as they said it, I was like, and what they said was, I believe you were in a relationship and that relationship affected. And what happened in my mind was the Lord brought back a particular incident, right, that had happened early in the year, just a relation. I'm like, that you're right. That bothered me. Because what happened was, as soon as this person said something to me, I created this inner vow in my mind. And there's the inner vow. I'm never, ever going to say their name again. And I went 8 months without saying that person's name, right? But it also did something to me. And I'm in inner healing. Like, I'm in a whole nother, I'm in 100 miles away from where I live. The guy is praying for me in a time of prayer. He's like, I feel like you went through something earlier this year, and it was a relationship that affected you. I'm like, what the heck? You know what I mean? And then the Lord's bringing it back to my mind. That's God. And so that's what she's talking about when she's explaining that. But you have to submit yourself to that process. And so sure enough, that happened. I was like, all right, Lord, I forgive the person for what they said. I forgive myself for this inner vow, right? And the next time I saw them, I said their name. And really, they may not have even, actually, I did hear they noticed that I stopped saying their name, right? But really what it did was it helped me because I'm carrying this weight, right? I'm carrying this thing. And that's also when we're young, we have these habits, we have these ways of thinking that we carry through life that are demonic. And to start with, we may call them defense mechanisms, but really what the enemy has done, he set up ways of thinking. He set up things in our life that will keep us from being all that we can be.
It's bondage.
It's
just bondage. Because it just keeps you tethered
yes.
in a certain place. And
That's
God
right.
wants you to be free.
Come on.
100%.
It's been absolutely critical for me to go through inner healing and deliverance and to keep putting myself before the Lord, to keep going, through that, to keep just getting better, to keep getting better.
Yeah, because He deals with us continually. It's
yes.
not a one time, one and
That's
done
right.
kind of thing. There's always more.
Absolutely.
Because God wants us totally free, and that's why we're doing this overcome. We're overcomers. Whatever we're dealing with, we can overcome it, not in and of ourselves, but by the power of God. And He does care about your body.
Yes, He does.
And about your weight. And if you're struggling with it, He wants to help you.
Yes, He does.
And that's why we're doing this. And I'm glad Pete agreed to be a part of this, so that you can understand, maybe, that wasn't your issue. Maybe that's not the weight you're carrying. But the point is, maybe there is a reason that you're struggling with your weight that's not just related to your body. Maybe you're carrying weight from some other issue, and He'll reveal that.
That's right.
To you.
One of the things that you're teaching on identity, and when it comes to weight, there are people that are bulimic and anorexic, right? And what that is that's a self-image issue. You see yourself based on somebody else's image of you, not your own. And so you're responding in a certain way. And God wants to heal you from that. He wants you free. So whether you're overweight or maybe you're underweight, whatever it is, God wants you free from all those things. It's interesting that God loves us no matter what. And the model for that is the parent and the child, right? Your child could go out and do some messed up things, could crash and jack up your car, right? You're going to be mad for a second, but you don't cast them aside. So even when we make mistakes, God does not cast us aside. He has a future and a hope for us, right? He wants the best for us. Yeah. And it's up to us, it's up to us to pursue that best and not be stuck.
Yeah, and don't, when you pray, don't just pray and, like Pete said, just wait.
Come on.
God will lead you somewhere. And when He does, you have to get up. You have to make that effort to do that. But I just want to point out, I used to be overweight. I think maybe when I was a teenager. And like in my first years of college, I was overweight, and I had a real complex about that. But what it was, I think my perception of myself was through an anorexic perspective. Because when I looked at myself, I saw fat, and people would say, "But you're so thin." Now I didn't do what anorexic people do, thank God. But I would just be so tormented because I felt like I was so fat. So even with weight, we think about being overweight, but even being underweight can be an issue, and it's again based on trauma that we've had, because people used to really pick on me when I had gained weight, and so they called me names. Oh my gosh, I mean, I had been bullied about other stuff, but this whole weight thing, so then it's like I've had enough bullying by God. I really don't want to be overweight and be bullied for that. So then I had this fear of weighing too much, and that's how I would see myself. And I know some people like that today. They're just constantly exercising and just, to me, overdoing it, because they have this, it seems like a fear and an obsession of being, thin. So you have to be careful of those things, and it takes the Holy Spirit to kind of really help you with that and through that, so you don't go either way.
And you mentioned being bullied and all of these different things, right? So much of this goes back to our childhood.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's something called the ACE, ACE, and as I was losing weight, I began to study the subject, because I was like, okay, I want to keep the weight off forever. So it requires that systematic education that I talked about. To have permanent transformation, you need systematic education, right? And so I started studying things like, there's something called ACE, adverse childhood experiences, right? It's a very popular thing that therapists use when they go into an urban area. They see children who've gone through certain issues. They can really predict how well you're going to navigate through society. Some communities even use it to predict whether or not children are going to end up in the criminal justice system. For example, I remember reading this in Denver, Colorado. If they go into a drug-infested area and they raid a drug house, they're not just concerned about taking the bad guys or the criminals away. What they're looking at is what kids are in that environment. Because even if the kids aren't on drugs, what happens is they've been exposed to this, right? So they've been exposed to these things. And there's a test that you can take online called the ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences Test. It's all around the world. There's a couple of famous TED Talks on it now. And the interesting thing is when I'm studying weight, this whole philosophy of adverse childhood experiences came out of an obesity clinic. So what happened was a doctor, he's in an obesity clinic, and he's giving people programs to go lose weight, right? And they're taking the program, they're following the program, they're successful, except for people who are really overweight. The real big people, it would work for about 30 days and then it would fail. So the guy, he's a doctor, but he's also a researcher. And so I believe the Lord worked with him to give him some wisdom on what to do. So he's asking questions. That's what he goes back and asks all of his patients questions. And he asked the wrong question by accident. He asked a young lady, he meant to ask her, how old were you when you started dieting? That's what he meant to ask her. What he accidentally asked her, well, how old were you when you first went on a binge, right? So a binge is technically like you take an enormous amount of food and you eat it all at once, right? So he asked the young lady, well, how old were you when you first began to binge eat? She said 4. And he wrote, well, normally you don't diet at 4. He said, what do you mean? She said, yes, when she first time she went on a binge, she took all like 3 days worth of food, went into a closet and ate everything that she could, and then ended up throwing up in a closet. Now, when he began to ask more questions, this is where the issues come in, right? He found out that was also around the same time that her stepfather started sexually molesting her. So she was doing this because in her mind, if she could gain weight and hide from him, he would not molest her, right? And so what happens for us is at a young age, these things come against us. And so, for instance, I was in Arizona and met a young lady who knew about me and knew about my teaching. She began to share that when she was young, she was in a very toxic home environment, very toxic. And she was in a racist community, and when she would go to school, kids would pick on her and tease her all day. So she developed a habit of taking food in the middle of the night and going in the closet and eating, right? Not binging, but not eating normally, like cupcakes and all that kind of stuff. She said, and then they moved across because she was in a biracial home, and that's where some of the tension was, right? The tension from the outside. She moves to the other side of the country, and that town that she moved to was racist in the opposite color, the opposite direction. It was so bad that they would have to put her mom in the trunk of the car to drive across town, right? And so now she's 5'2", about 290 pounds, right? She's struggling with her weight, but all of the root of that is all at this one place. So the ACE, when you look at the ACE, you can take 10 questions. It's a 10-question exam. Were you raised in this environment, that environment? And it will tell you the likelihood of you having struggles later in life. And it just makes so much sense. We see certain things in the Bible, right? We see that your mom was the mom trained Jacob on how to be a trickster, and then you know what I mean. So these things, these patterns run in families, and you have to believe, and this is what we're trying to communicate, that there's something better for you. God has a better life for you. He wants you to do better and be better. He just loves you, and he wants you to experience his best. Yeah. And it is possible.
And it's not hopeless. Because people try to take those research and label people and put them in that box for years, especially African Americans. Yes. They grow up in certain conditions. Right. They already doom you, that you're going to be this, that, or the other thing. But with God, nothing is impossible. That's right. Nothing. He can change the whole trajectory of your life, like he did with Pete. That's right. He grew up homeless and dealing with a mother with mental illness and all kind of trauma that he'll share about at a later time, trauma and drama. And his life should have turned out, a certain way based on how he started. But as I always say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Right. And so God got a hold of him and turned his life around. And now he's on TV and, he's, just doing all kind of amazing stuff and helping people turn their lives around. But one point I wanted to say, because I've been in ministry for a long time, ministered to so many women, and I've heard that from women who've been sexually abused. They've actually said to me, I gained weight, so I would not be attracted.
That's right.
So I would not attract that kind of attention.
That's right.
And so those wounds need to be healed. And a lot of them don't even know. They don't even know sometimes why they're eating so much, it's like
That's
an
it.
unconscious thing. They just don't want to be attractive. God will show you,
Yes.
when you're ready, and when there are resources around to help you deal with your trauma or drama or whatever you're dealing with. So we just
You're
want
ready.
to encourage you.
You're ready. You're ready. You're ready to deal with it. You're ready.
Because you have to.
If you're ready,
have to
I believe that
confront it.
there's, that there's divine timing, right? And there's divine intersections. And for me, at the point in my life when I gave my life to the Lord, and I was in a ministry that was a teaching ministry, right? That was a divine destiny moment. I believe that some of you all are listening to this. This is a destiny moment. You would not be hearing about this if this was not important for God for you to hear. Because you could be watching Jerry Springer. If he's even on the air, you could be doing something else, but God has something for you, and we hope this pricks your heart. God wants you free emotionally. He wants you free physically, and out of that, you will be able to experience your relationship with Him more, and the experience with others even the more, with so much more freedom than you have now.
And live your life on purpose.
On purpose.
Live a fulfilled life. So God loves you.
God loves you.
We love you. And He can turn His situation around. So Pete, why don't you let them know how to contact you? Because he's an excellent speaker, excellent, I don't want to say motivator. He's not.
Thank you.
He's a transformer. He can help transform people's lives through the wisdom and insight that God has given him in this area, not just this area. Because remember, it's not just about weight, it's your life.
Your life.
Your whole life. It's not just one segregated issue. And so just let them know how they can reach
So
you.
this is how you reach me. If you're going to reach out to us for anything, bring us in together, right? We do a great tag team, right? We call, for those of you who may not know, we used to call Lydia the rabbi, right? Just her depth of wisdom and knowledge in the word and about these things. So you can reach out to me at pete@petethomas.com. The website is petethomas.com. I don't even know what's up there nowadays, but you can reach out to me there, or you can reach me through Lydia right here. Can't Keep Silent.
And so your book is available on
Book is actually, so you can order the book directly from me. I don't even know if I put the page up. I'll put the page back up, but you can reach us directly to get the book.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you.
You all be blessed.
Be blessed. God bless.
Bye.
Ecclesiastes 4:7 says the end of a thing is better than the beginning, and the rest of the verse talks about patience. You may be facing a hard situation, but know this: if it is not better, it is not the end. Just be patient. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose." I know that God has a calling on your life, and if you love Him, He will work all things together for your good. If you know someone who is struggling as a result of tragedy, please share this recording with them. I believe it will instill hope and faith in God for victory over their circumstances. Always remember that God loves you and you are His heart. Only He can turn the tests in your life into testimonies. Just open your heart to Him and allow Jesus to become Lord of your life. He will make you an overcomer too. Thank you for listening to Can't Keep Silent in this installment in our series. Please leave a comment or send us an email at lydia@can'tkeepsilent.com or visit us on Facebook at Can't Keep Silent.